Room. So yeah, Luca, I'm just trying to go through all of the free content, starting with the info, working my way up to the more advanced stuff. Mainly because I'm a cheapskate and I don't want to pay a subscription until I've done all the free content. Like, what's the point? And then yeah, once I've exhausted all of this, I'm going to go through and do some of the paid stuff. I mean, why would you pay for it? It's free. I'd rather like do all the free stuff and then pay for it. Like, it's timed effectively anyway, isn't it? Because you get monthly access. Like, alright, so let's update the room. Right, common attacks, with practical exercises to see how common attacks occur and improve your cyber hygiene to stay safer online. Our existence in a digital world makes it imperative that we understand and protect against common attacks. This room will discuss some of the most common techniques used by attackers to target people online. It will also teach some of the best ways to prevent the success of each technique. Without further ado, let's begin. What is social engineering? Social engineering is the term used to describe any cyber attack where a human, rather than a computer, is the target. For this reason, it is sometimes referred to as people hacking. For example, if an attacker wishes to obtain a victim's password, they could attempt to guess or brute force the password, or they could simply beat you up. While the example linked above is relatively straightforward, social engineering attacks can become very complex and often result in the attacker gaining significant control over the target's life, both online and offline. Social engineering attacks are often multi-layered and escalate due to the snowball effect. For example, an attacker may start off by obtaining a small amount of publicly identifiable information from the victim's social media presence, which they could then use to get more information from, say, your phone, broadband provider. The information obtained from the second stage could then be used to gain even more useful information, and then escalate step by step to make to something like the victim's bank account. The best way to understand social engineering is to see it in action. Watch these videos from DEF CON and CNN to demonstrate the immense power of social engineering. They are both well worth the watch. And let me guess, it's the one with the baby crying in the background. If it's the one I'm thinking
this
of.
99-pound intelligent drone is detecting the entire photography industry.
That's an ad. Why is it 3 minutes long? Yeah, we're not watching that. Yeah, she like phones up the guy's phone network and pretends to be his wife, and he's like puts a baby crying in the background, trying to coerce the person on the other end to help her because she's got to get back to the baby. Other forms of social engineering: charismatic hackers calling your phone company and taking possession of your account is one form of social engineering. However, there are many other types. Social engineering is a vast topic encompassing any attack that relies on tricking humans into giving the attacker access, rather than attacking the technology directly. While direct interaction with targets is the most common style of social engineering, other examples include dropping USB storage devices in public, i.e. company car parks, in the hope that someone, often a company employee, will pick one up and plug it into a sensitive computer. In a similar vein, attackers may leave a charging cable plugged into a socket in a public place. In actuality, the cable contains malicious software such as keyloggers or tools to take control of the victim's device. Why have they linked to Stuxnet for that? I don't know if this was ever actually proven to be the infection vector, but in short, the limits to social engineering are the bounds to an attacker's imagination. A good social engineer can and will use a plethora of psychological tricks under any plausible context to hack their targets. It's Staying safe from social engineering attacks. In many ways, it's very tricky to stay safe from a social engineer, as it won't always be you who the attacker is talking to, but rather someone who can give them what they need without your consent, i.e. calling your bank and pretending to be you, or access to your account. That said, there are still measures you can take to protect yourself from social engineering attacks. Always make sure to set up multiple forms of authentication and ensure that the providers respect these. For example, set difficult to guess or otherwise incorrect answers to security questions, which is great until you forget the question. Making sure that you store the answer somewhere safe. Oh, there we go. And make sure that these questions are asked when you try to access accounts over the phone. Never plug external media into a computer that you care about or that is connected to any other devices. Ideally, don't plug the media in at all. Instead, give it to your local police for safekeeping. What if it's a Bitcoin wallet?
Lucas says,
Well, there have been many attack vectors for Stuxnet, so it is highly likely that dropping USB devices was one of them. D.
Yeah. I just don't know. Like they always. Whenever I read anything on social engineering, I always get the lowest possible capability is always the thing that they reference, and it just like you say, they did a lot more than just drop USB sticks in a car park. I just don't get why that's the specific example they gave. Good time to show off the OMG cable, actually. So yeah, if you want one of those things that they were just chatting about, you should go here and buy one. Quite expensive, but I mean, it's for the lols, alright? Get it. Right, read the task information and watch the videos. Yeah. What is the original target of Stuxnet? It was the uranium spinny things, what they called. Centrifuges, that's the one.
My ducky broke a couple months ago.
Oh no! I don't have a ducky, I've got something similar. I've got so much crap in my drawer, I need to have a flick through. I've got a breadboard with an Arduino on it somewhere, and it does the same sort of thing. So. Alright, we need to find out what the original target was. The Iran nuclear program, that's probably the answer. Yeah, cool. See, I would have put the centrifuges in there, but yeah, I guess holistically that's the answer. Right, social engineering, phishing. Phishing is one of the most common cyber attack types employed by scammers and bad actors, targeting individuals and businesses indiscriminately. In many cases, phishing is the initial attack vector used to gain access to a company's infrastructure before performing further attacks against the corporate network. While there are many automated tools now available to help combat phishing threats, phishing is still one of the most prolific attack vectors around.
Well, wasn't it a supply chain attack? So technically.
Alright, so we've got a site to view. Phishing is a subsection of social engineering, whereas social engineering is a very general term used to describe any attack that takes advantage of a human rather than a computer system. Phishing specifically describes attacks whereby the scammer or other attackers try to trick a victim into opening malicious web pages by sending them a text message, email, or another form of online correspondence. Traditionally, phishing simply refers to emails. However, in the days of instant messaging, text messaging, voice video calling, the term has now evolved to blanket these other categories. These other forms are sometimes referred to individually as smishing, so over SMS and voice. These attacks are very widespread. Indeed, the chance of you not having been on the receiving end of such an attack are slim, and are frequently deployed on massive scales using lists of leaked or stolen phone numbers and addresses. Phishing messages usually deploy psychological trickery, for example, introducing a false sense of urgency to make a victim act rashly, and nearly always involve a victim to click a link to a web app owned by the attacker. The victim is then often asked to enter sensitive information, for example, login details or credit card information, at which point the malicious site stores the information and the attack is complete. Alternatively, the victim may inadvertently install malware from the malicious page, thus giving the attacker an entry point into their device and network. There are 3 types of phishing attack. So general phishing, a simple mass phishing attack which doesn't target anyone in particular, although they may aim for large groups, PayPal users, Amazon customers. These large-scale campaigns are usually very simple and are generally, but not always, fairly easy to spot as messages, and malicious sites are often not very well crafted and frequently contain many immediate visible errors. This is not the case so much anymore. Spear phishing. More targeted than general phishing, spear phishing aims for an individual or a small group, e.g. employees or of a specific company. Spear phishing campaigns are generally better crafted than the correspondence and malicious sites used in general phishing, as they are designed to target a particular group, often as part of a more extensive campaign against the target. Whaling is an even more specific form than spear phishing. Whaling targets the high-value individuals, such as the C-suite execs in a target company. The messages are generally extremely well crafted and tend to be very hard to spot. Be aware that you are as much more likely to encounter general phishing attacks than spear phishing or whaling in your day-to-day life. This may not be the case in your work life, however, especially if you are a high-ranking member of a company. An example of popular general phishing scenario or pretext would receive an email purportedly from Amazon informing you that your account has been used to buy a very costly item, like the latest iPad, and then given a link to view your purchase history. The link looks like it goes to amazon.co.uk, but will actually take you to an attacker-controlled web application that looks identical to the Amazon login, asking you to enter your Amazon credentials. When you enter your credentials, you get redirected to the real Amazon orders page, where you'll find that there are no unauthorized purchases yet. The attacker will then use your duly provided credentials to actually order expensive items with your account. So step 1 is this tower of emails. Attacker sends out malicious phishing email campaign. The prospective victims receive the email. Some of them open the email with the link. The victims enter their credentials into the attacker's fake web page. And then 4, page stores the credentials or sends them directly to attacker. 5, attacker uses credentials to access the site, thus taking over the victim's account. Phishing attacks work best when the malicious web page mimics an existing, usually well-known web page. For this reason, attackers, scammers will usually use one of the many freely available tools to clone an existing page, which can then be edited at their leisure. The end goal of a phishing attack can vary significantly depending on who is performing the attack. For example, a low-level scammer may simply be after sensitive information, whereas a high-powered group of malicious attackers may be targeting a specific organization with the intention of causing further damage. Identify phishing attacks. Many generic phishing attacks are relatively easy to spot. They frequently have poor grammar, often do not address their victims by name, instead leaving the generic greeting, "Dear customer." That said, other instances can be extremely difficult to spot, with some attacks being thorough enough to fool cybersecurity professionals. Yeah. I got done by an internal test before. It's not exactly impossible to not get done by one of these. Regardless of the attack type, in many cases the pretext will be plausible. For example, an Amazon scam listed above, or fake messages sent from your bank telling you that there has been unusual activity with your account and please log in to review it. This is especially true for spear phishing or whaling attacks, where the pretext will be very carefully tailored to the target. Equally, the domain name for the malicious site will usually be similar but never identical to the domain name used by a legitimate website. A real-world example from 2021, a group of scammers sent out a mass phishing campaign over SMS, mimicking the British Royal Mail Service using the domain name https royalmail.co.uk, but the L at the end is a 1. So it's actually Royal May, or my1.co.uk. By exchanging the final L in the number. Also bear in mind that HTML emails, effectively any email that looks fancy and contains formatting or graphics, can be used to mask the real domain name in use. For example, the text in the email may be legitimate, however the link actually goes to something totally different. You can see this by hovering your mouse over the link in the desktop application. The real link should appear at the bottom of the screen as in this graphic. You can try this for yourself with the link below, and then we can see it comes up with sheebs.xyz in the status panel. In a similar vein, the from email address in the email will often be suspicious. Many generic mass phishing campaigns will simply use a Gmail address, not bothering to use a domain name associated with the company they're spoofing. This is a dead giveaway that the email is suspicious. The best way to identify a phishing email is to simply keep your eyes open and look for anything suspicious. All but the best will have a mistake somewhere. You can also spoof the from address anyway, because you can just host your own SMTP service and send us whatever you like. Like, I sent an email to a friend of mine pretending to be Steve Jobs after he died because he told me he stole an iPad. So I sent him an email saying, "This is Steve Jobs. I've heard that you've stolen an iPad. Please turn yourself in immediately." And he replied back to it. So Apple would have got that because you don't see the response, but yeah, it actually goes to the proper address. Staying safe from phishing attacks. There are a variety of things that you can do and should to keep yourself safe from phishing attacks. Delete unknown or untrusted emails without opening them. If you can see anything suspicious in the email, also report it as spam to your email provider or forward it on to your IT security department if you receive the email at work. Never open attachments from untrusted emails. Do not click on embedded links or in emails or messages. Where possible, navigate to the real website in your browser. Do not access the content that way. Absolutely must click on the link. Ensure the domain is correct and that the link points where you think it does. Gotta head out and get some dinner. No worries, Luca. Thanks for dropping in. I'll see you soon, hopefully. Always make sure that your device and antivirus software is up to date. Avoid making your personal information, phone number public if possible. If you must publish personal details publicly, create a burner email address, a temporary address made for one purpose and destroyed soon afterwards. It's worth noticing at this point that anyone can fall for a phishing attack, especially complex ones that have been made to look very realistic. If you accidentally fall for one, don't panic. Make sure you change the affected password immediately and contact IT services if the attack happened at work. Let's give you a shout out before we go. So, Luca.
Yeah, it's still a little bit quick.
What game is that?
Yeah, it's fine though. It's fine, isn't it?
Oh, it's Kerbal Space Program.
I think we made it.
Don't think you're going to get off
People,
that
let's
planet, though.
just for 1 second realize what we achieved here. This is like so cool. I so much enjoy watching this. I so much enjoy hosting this. This was like absolutely amazing.
I don't know where you landed, but it looked like the moon, I guess. The static site will display a series of emails and text messages. You'll be asked to identify which of these messages are genuine and which are phishing. Once you've successfully identified all the messages, you'll be presented with a flag. So, take a look at the email and decide whether you think it's phishing or whether it's safe. So we've got google.com as the domain. It's sent to me, apparently. Doesn't mention my name specifically, so that's dodgy. It's come to our attention that your account may have been accessed by a third party, so google.com. Going to Google support. It looks kind of legit. Looks safe. Okay, well why is that? Oh, just because the link's different. Really? But Google support's a real thing. Like, yeah, support.google.com. Like, that's a different domain in theory. Like, you wouldn't... whatever. Right, that's phishing. There is a misspelling in the domain. Where? It only contains one G instead of two. What are you on about? Support at Google. Can anyone see that? There's definitely two G's. The domain name of the linked file looks suspicious. Not particularly. Is it because I went back and it's like giving me the wrong thing? Yeah, I think it's fucked up. Like, it doesn't recognize that I've gone backwards. Phishing. Alright, let's just start that one again. It looks like it's fucked up. Alright. Right, so this is apparently phishing because the link goes somewhere else, even though, like, it's entirely possible you'd get that. Take a look at the below mail and decide whether you think the email is phishing or not. The address these emails usually come from. Okay, yeah, now we can see the double G is missing, so they've just created clicking here. Okay, but that. Okay, so we've got bankinggroup.sharedhosting.tm, so the sharedhosting.tm is dodge. So we've got tryhackme support.thm. We haven't seen you for a while. Tryhackme.com. See, like here, like you could argue that that's not the domain. that they use to send the... Like, you know that tryhackme.com's legit, but, you know, why is that domain different? That's why I fucking hate phishing. It's just dumb. If you try and do any education on it, it's just shite. So this is safe, I think. Yeah, even though it shouldn't be. Acme IT support. I've attached this for you. Don't send it to anyone. And what? Can't see what the link is. I'm gonna say it's dodgy just because it's got a fucking attachment. Don't trust PDF files attached that are not from a trusted source. But then say this isn't a trusted source. Stupid. Close. Right, malware and ransomware. Despite the steady advance of antivirus software solutions, malware and ransomware in particular is an ever-growing threat. Malware, short for malicious software, can be defined as any software designed to perform malicious actions on behalf of an attacker. There are many different kinds of malware. We'll be focusing on generic malware and ransomware specifically in this task. Once installed, attackers commonly use malware to steal information, cause damage, or execute arbitrary commands on the infected system. Malware is often used to perform a set of tasks referred to as command and control. C2 malware connects back to the waiting server and allows an attacker to control the infected system remotely, often incorporating many simple tasks such as keylogging as built-in parts of the malicious software. Ransomware is a specialized class of malware used to infect as many systems as possible, encrypting the data on the devices and holding it to ransom. If the victim pays the attackers within a set time frame, usually via cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin, the data is theoretically returned. Ransomware usually spreads by exploiting known vulnerabilities in common installed software, i.e. Microsoft Windows operating system. It can be extremely fast spreading once an infection begins and can demand millions in ransom money. The goal of the ransomware attack is to infect as many systems as possible, then make as much data inaccessible as possible by encrypting it with a key known only to the attacker. Once the attack is complete, the malware usually displays a window that looks something like this. It's just the WannaCry one. The window gives the victims a time limit and instruction on how to pay, as well as a rundown on what exactly happened to their data. The example is from the infamous WannaCry ransomware. With the ransom paid, the malware may or may not decrypt and the data and self-destruct, depending entirely on how nice the attackers are. There is an awesome site called No More Ransom. And then this tool, Crypto Sheriff. You can upload encrypted files and it will tell you what strain of ransomware encrypted it, if it's known. And then if you're really lucky, you'll get a decryption tool for the relevant ransomware. If it's been, like, if the keys have been leaked after the fact, or if it's been reversed in some way. So yeah, you might be very lucky and be able to reverse it. There are various ways an attacker can infect a target with malware. Many of these revolve around social engineering or phishing attacks. For example, an attacker may send a victim an email containing a Microsoft Word or Excel file that contains a malicious macro. This is embedded inside the document set to run when the user opens the file. These will not run by default unless the user clicks Enable Content, which I guarantee they'll do anyway. However, there are situations in which users may genuinely wish to execute macros. A good attacker will capitalize on these pretexts to convince the victim to click the button. Similarly, the attacker may send the file as compiled as a .exe, a PDF, a PS1 PowerShell script, or a .batch script. A HTML file, application file .hta, or even a JS JavaScript file to be executed by the JavaScript interpreter built into Windows. In short, there are many different ways and formats that the attacker can send code to a victim. Once the code is executed, the infection begins. Alternatively, the attacker may exploit a vulnerability in public-facing infrastructure in a corporate environment, for example a web server, thus giving themselves an opening into the internal network and allowing them to start a larger attack, facilitated by malware. Staying safe from malware, ransomware in particular, is best done with a combination of awareness and keeping things up to date. Always accept updates and patches when offered. Never click on suspicious links, especially in emails. Always be on the lookout for people trying to get you to download or run files. Never plug unknown media devices into important computers. Always back up important data. Make sure that your antivirus software is always up to date and activated. If you or your business get infected with ransomware, do not pay the ransom. Instead, call the local authorities immediately. Try to contain the infection by disabling your router or otherwise physically preventing the infected device from connecting to anything else. Do not power the infected device off. This can sometimes destroy any potential opportunities to decrypt the data without paying. What did WannaCry attackers request payment in? Bitcoin. Alright, passwords. Loop. The Great Hash Cracker. Right, for better or worse, passwords are an integral part of most authentication systems. We use passwords to protect everything from our social media accounts to our banking applications. Unfortunately, despite their significant importance, it is still all too easy to create and use an insecure password. It's even easier to take other actions that lower the overall security of a system. For example, even the most robust password in the world is useless if written on a whiteboard in full view of a camera, especially if the same password is used more than one service. What makes passwords strong? Advice on what constitutes a strong password has changed over time. In the past, people were advised to choose complex passwords that were easy to remember. The password above is a collection of lowercase uppercase characters, including symbols and numeric digits. It's over 8 characters long, making it almost impossible to attack by brute force with current level of technology. Yeah, not so much nowadays. And is created using knowledge that is unlikely to be held by anyone other than the owner of the password. Importantly, it doesn't conform to normal patterns, using unusual symbols, exchanging only some characters of leet speak, and containing date range as opposed to a single date, making it hard to guess. For all intents and purposes, this is a traditionally strong password. That said, the physical connection, personal connection even, means that this password could potentially be made weaker through social engineering or in-depth information gathering on the target, or just get them to add ones to the end when they need to reset them. The current best practices lean more towards length and complexity. For example, Vim is obviously, indisputably, the best text. Using the passphrase rather than the traditional password, the password is significantly longer, while retaining some more complex elements. Despite not looking so obfuscated, this has the advantage of being easier to remember but still being incredibly difficult to brute force. However, you should use long, completely random passwords. For example, these take millions of years to crack and are objectively the most secure option available. The drawback is usability. This is largely mitigated by using a password manager, which will be discussed in the next task. So what makes a weak password? Often go for simple passwords that mean something to them, often following one of a few simple patterns. For example, a commonly used pattern is the name location, followed by year, followed by an exclamation mark. This is enough to satisfy most password complexity requirements. However, it's trivial to guess if an attacker knows that you have a son called Gareth who was born in 2012. This kind of password is inherently extremely insecure. Ensure any password that could easily be guessed by someone who knows you relatively well Equally short passwords, especially those that don't contain any alphanumeric characters, are weak against brute force attacks. Of equal importance to password strength is reuse. You can have the strongest password in the world, but if you use it across numerous accounts and it gets leaked, an attacker can simply use the strong password on all affected accounts. Equally, if you find out that your password has been exposed, you will have a lot of work to do changing all your account passwords. Unfortunately, not every service stores passwords securely, making it doubly important not to reuse passwords. What happens if a service gets hacked and the database containing user account information gets leaked? As a best case scenario, this service has used secure hashing algorithm and you'll have a strong password. In this case, the password is safe, but your email address and username may still be leaked publicly. As a worst case scenario, your plaintext password is either immediately available or easy for an attacker to find. If this happens, then both your username and password are known to the attacker, allowing them to take over your account or perform credential stuffing attacks, using your stolen username and password pair against other services to see if you reuse them elsewhere. These leaked databases containing credentials frequently appear on the dark web, which leads us to our final point, data exposure notification services. The largest and most well-known exposure checker is called Have I Been Pwned. It exists as a free online service that scours data dumps and catalogs of all information found, allowing users to enter their email address and see if they've been included in any breaches. Have I Been Pwned also allows you to add yourself to a notification list, meaning that you will receive an email notifying you if the email address appears in any future data breaches. While not a perfect defense, notification services give you an early warning to change your passwords, hopefully before you get hacked. An attacker has a few options when it comes to attacking passwords and authentication systems. Some attacks are entirely local, working entirely on a device owned by the attacker without interacting with the target service at all. Others are remote attacks involving the original server. Local attacks require a stolen copy of the credentials in question. The attacker will take a file full of stolen usernames and emails and hash passwords, then use software to effectively try to guess the input that created the hash, either using randomly generated sequences of characters or by using pre-generated word lists of possible passwords, which is faster but might miss things. Hybrid types are also very widely used when an attacker takes an existing word list and mutates it to add new characters, symbols and random elements. Local password attacks will be demonstrated in the interactive element for the task. Remote attacks tend to be one of two categories. They either involve attempting to brute force known usernames by sending requests to the server and seeing what it responds with, or they may use known username password pairs from previous breaches to see if they're valid on the target site. This is the aforementioned credential stuffing. So, put yourself in the shoes of a malicious attacker. You have managed to dump a password database from an online service. You still have to crack the hashes. Based on the content of the website, you have generated a likely list of passwords, which is as follows. Copy the list of passwords into the password list box and click Go. Right, so it's reverse the password. What is the password? This is a very simple browser-based example. However, in reality, local hash cracking with a word list isn't any more complex from a high-level perspective. It's the same technique, but with a lot more potential passwords. Hopefully this example illustrates why it's so important to choose strong passwords, even if the passwords are hashed appropriately. In the next task, we will look at some of the common account protection methods, as well as how to generate secure passwords. Right, multi-factor auth. In the previous task, we looked at some of the common attacks made against passwords and authentication systems. We also looked at what makes a password weak or strong. This task will cover some of the extra steps you can take to enhance your password security through the use of password managers and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, is a term used to describe any authentication process where you need more than one thing to log in. The most common example is when you have to enter a password for an account, then you get asked for a 6-digit code that is sent to your phone, usually expires after 15 minutes or so. The particular second authentication factor is referred to as a time-based one-time password. This is one of the most common second factors currently in use. You should always activate multi-factor auth where available. Doing so means the attacker must obtain more than one factor if they wish to gain your account. For example, they must have both the password and your phone, or the ability to intercept the text message. Many people see it as an unnecessary hassle, however it's well worth the added security. SMS Text Messages based TOTP, despite being the most commonly used, is far from the most secure. There have been documented cases of attackers managing to reroute text without undue difficulty. So if not SMS, what do you use? Most services will provide you with an option for using an authenticator app. When you use this option, you're presented with a QR code as well as a secret key, either of which can be scanned or imported into an app such as Authy or Google Auth. Once you've added your secret key for the application, these apps generate TOTP codes entirely on your device without requiring any network connectivity or interceptable SMS. Password managers. As previously mentioned, the most secure passwords are long, completely random strings of characters, digits, symbols. However, they're very difficult to memorize. Indeed, memorizing different 60-digit randomly generated passwords for every online account is simply not feasible. Enter password managers. At the most basic level, a manager is a safe space to store your passwords. They store passwords in vaults, encrypted storage, either locally on your own device or as an online service. These vaults are accessed using a master password, the only password you need to remember, or more commonly in recent years biometric data such as a fingerprint. Some password managers are free, while others require a paid subscription. That said, features and usability provided by paid offerings often make them well worth the expense. The more fully featured password managers usually also include a range of additional capabilities such as storing other types of data, auto-filling passwords automatically for other services, and secure password generation. Having these available means that you can quickly and easily generate very strong passwords and store them automatically, then seamlessly have the password entered for you when you attempt to log in. They are the recommended way to handle authentication for many accounts. However, it's worth remembering that the security of the whole structure can revolve around a single master password, so you have to make sure that it's solid. So then we've got some examples: OnePass, LastPass, KeePass, Bitwarden. KeePass is very good because it's open sourced, so that will cost you absolutely nothing. There are many others available. Each password manager has its own advantages and disadvantages. It's worth doing some research to find the one that suits you best. Where you have the option, which should you use as a second authentication factor between SMS and TTOTP? You should use app. Right, public network safety. Where's my thing gone? The internet plays a gargantuan role in modern life, with most people being connected in some way virtually constantly. As such, most public spaces, cafes, restaurants, public transport are fully equipped with public Wi-Fi to let people catch up on email, or equally likely to play the latest mobile game. What people don't realise is that expecting public Wi-Fi to be available can prove very dangerous indeed. Public Wi-Fi, while incredibly handy, also gives attackers an ideal opportunity to attack other users' devices, or simply intercept and record traffic to steal sensitive data. The latter technique can be as simple as exploiting the fact that most people expect to see public networks available. The attacker can quickly set up a network of their own and monitor the traffic of everyone who connects. This is referred to as a man-in-the-middle attack. and it's very easy to carry out. For example, if you were to connect to a network belonging to an attacker, then logged into an account for a website that doesn't use HTTPS, the attacker could simply pluck your credentials out of the network traffic and use them to log into your account for themselves. The scenario will be explored in more detail in the interactive element of this task. However, it's fortunately significantly less likely to occur with modern websites which implement TLS to encrypt traffic between their servers and users as standard. Equally, being connected to any network, regardless of whether you trust it or not, makes your device visible to others on the network. You never know who else is on a public network and what their intentions might be. The ideal solution to the problem is simply not connecting to an untrusted network. Beneficial though public wireless connections are, that it will always be safer to use a hotspot or private network. Unfortunately, the ideal solution is not always feasible. When there is a case, we must rely on other methods for staying safe. Virtual private networks, VPNs, encrypt all traffic leaving and re-entering your machine, rendering any interception technique useless, as the intercepted data will look simply like gibberish. While it's possible to host your own VPN server for free, most people prefer to use one of the many online solutions. Some of these commercial solutions are free, but be warned, free VPNs tend not to provide the best security and often harvest your data themselves to make a profit. That said, the price of a good VPN is more than worth it for the increased safety when operating on untrusted networks. There are many good options around, including Proton VPN and Malware VPN. I don't know why they never put OpenVPN in this list. Like, you could just create one on a Raspberry Pi and just run your own. It costs you like 20 quid. Like, that's it. The cost of the hardware. Website connection security. In addition to the actions you can take yourself, it's important to be aware of measures that online services take to protect you. All websites should now only serve information in the safety of an encrypted connection. As with using VPNs, this prevents the attacker from reading or modifying your web traffic as they intercept it. The encrypted connection used to create HTTPS Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure is referred to as TLS, Transport Layer Security. And in most browsers it's represented by a padlock in the left of the search bar, which indicates that the connection is secure. It doesn't. It indicates that the connection is encrypted. With this in place, your traffic can only be decrypted in very select circumstances, namely if the work or school managed device you are connected to work/school network. Note, the presence of the padlock indicates that the connection is secure. No, it fucking doesn't. It's encrypted. It does not guarantee that the website itself is safe. In other words, malicious websites can still easily have a TLS, meaning that your traffic with this server is encrypted, but it doesn't stop the site from having malicious purpose. Alright, so if you're saying that part of it, then this bit is not true. And it shouldn't be saying that in the guides. Like, if anyone can set up TLS, it's not. If you're accessing a website without the padlock symbol, never enter any credentials or sensitive information, especially if you're using an untrusted network. In some instances, you may also see a padlock with a cross through it or an exclamation mark over it. This indicates the connection is theoretically secure, but there is something wrong with the certificate in use by the server. The presence of this altered padlock icon can mean anything from the server administrator simply letting the certificate go out of date, or the attacker actively meddling with the security of the connection. In other words, if the icon is anything other than the regular padlock, do not trust the connection is secure. I mean, again, the connection is never secure, it's encrypted. You may encounter full page errors related to certificate security when trying to access web pages. These can look like this. As a general rule, if you see an error like this, you should click the Go Back button or equivalent in other browsers. It usually means there is something wrong with the encrypted connection, potentially leaving your traffic open to being stolen. Deploy the interactive tasks. The interactive content for this task demonstrates what can happen if information is sent potentially over a potentially unsafe network with various types of encryption. There is no flag for the task, however you're encouraged to read each of the different scenarios, mixing, matching the options provided. Right. So what are we doing? Send request. So the attacker's happy because we didn't have any security controls on. So if we enable HTTPS, he's not happy. And if we enable VPN, he's not happy. Is that it? Is this actually the lab? What happens if you put both on? Fuck you. Cool. That's a pretty pointless lab, but sure. Right, backups. We've just had World Backup Day. Backups are arguably the single most important defense measure you can take to protect your data. No matter what happens, if you have taken appropriate steps to back up your information up, you'll always be able to recover almost regardless of the severity of damage. Whether the data in question is all-important business critical data at work or the family photos at home, backups are a simple insurance measure that pays off for itself many times over should the worst come to pass. Depending on the data in question, taking and restoring from backups could be as simple as dragging and dropping folders into Google Drive. That said, there are many other software solutions available to help automate backups, take the pain out of restoration. The golden 3-2-1 rule. The golden standard for taking backups is relatively simple and often called 3-2-1. The 3-2-1 rule specifies that you should always keep at least 3 up-to-date copies of your data. This can include the original copy, but all copies must be maintained. Okay. Backup should be stored on at least 2 different storage mediums, for example, a cloud backup and a USB drive. 1 or more backups should be stored off-site in cloud services such as Google Drive. Your backup should be safe if all 3 conditions of 3-2-1 rule are met, but of equal importance is the frequency at which you take backups. There's no point in keeping your backups stored securely if they're all a year old. I mean, that's not entirely true. It's the content that you've got to secure, not the age. How frequently you back up your data is up to you, but depends on the sensitivity of the data, that's what I was getting at, compared with the risk of compromise and the amount of backup space available. For example, a multi-billion-pound corporation handling sensitive data is at high risk of a ransomware attack and may wish to take full backups 2 to 3 times a day. By comparison, a home user may only feel the need to take a backup once a week. What is the minimum number of up-to-date backups you should make? 3. Of these, how many at minimum should be stored in another location? 1. Right, let's minimize this now because that's not a task. Alright, software updates. Updates are an essential part of software development lifecycle. They allow developers to add new features, fix bugs, and otherwise simply alter aspects of the product. When vulnerabilities are discovered in software, the developers usually release special updates called patches that contain a fix for the vulnerability or otherwise patch security issue. For this reason, it's imperative that you update your software whenever possible, especially for things like operating systems, where vulnerabilities can be particularly dangerous, as seen in the case study below. Eternal Blue. Eternal Blue is believed to have been discovered in the United States National Security Agency. Was leaked to the general public in April 2017. The vulnerability affects an integral part of Windows operating system, gives remote attackers complete control over the target at the highest level of privilege. You can see this for yourself in the blue room on TryHackMe. I think that's a freebie. No, it's not. Of course not. Right. Unfortunately, all software eventually loses support from its maintainers becoming deprecated and no longer receiving updates. This is referred to as the software being end of life. At this point, all of the software must be replaced as soon as possible. If replacing the software is not possible, then the device should be segregated as far as possible to prevent exploitation of vulnerabilities that will inevitably be found and left unpatched. Antivirus updates. Most antivirus software packages receive very frequent updates. This is because they largely work using local databases of known exploit signatures, which must be kept up to date. In other words, when new malware is discovered, it gets sent around antivirus vendors who generate a signature that identifies this particular piece of malicious software. These signatures are then distributed to every device on the planet that uses the antivirus software, ensuring that your installed antivirus solution is kept up to date on all latest known malware. If antivirus software is not allowed to update, it will still be able to catch some malware, although through other methods. However, the local signature database will be quickly outdated, resulting in malicious software potentially falling through the gaps. In short, if antivirus wants to update, then let it. Optional, complete the blue room on TryHackMe to see the brutal effects. Yeah, I mean, we can't do that because it's a sub-only run. But we'll do that later when I sub. Conclusion. There are many different options for malicious attacker to target both individuals and sweeping groups. However, there are remediations for every attack. Having completed this room, you should hopefully understand a little more about common attacks and defenses against them. You don't need to be an expert in computers or cybersecurity to stay safe online. The solutions are simple and well worth adopting in your personal and professional online interactions. Oh, I got a badge. Can't generate it yet. Security awareness. Hey. Right, what's next? I want to do all the CV ones together, so let's skip those. Let's do Python basics.